Welcome, guys. Here we are back again. This is episode 9.
Wow.
Hog Jack the podcast presented by Shipley Swine Genetics. Once again, very, very special guest we are truly excited about. We got Clay Zwilling, CEO of the National Swine Registry, sitting with us. Clay's a dear friend of ours, someone we've known for a long time and think a heck of a lot of. And so, Clay, we're tickled to death to have you come sit down with us here on the podcast. Getting into it, you are the CEO, term number 2 at the National Swine Registry. So tell me a little bit about how it came on for term number 1, of course, and then what made you decide you loved it so much you decided to come back again.
I miss Randy calling.
Just arrange that.
Yeah. Well, first, appreciate the opportunity. And,
yes, for sure.
I've enjoyed watching the podcast and excited to be on. But yeah, it's been kind of a unique journey. And a lot of people, I think, can say that about different aspects of their life. But I came to NSR originally in 2017. And I always tell young people, a lot of people don't know this part of the story, but until I was hired at NSR the first time, that was the third time I'd actually applied for a job at NSR. So I always like to tell people, God has timing, and sometimes you're just not the right fit for the role. So,
and the first time you applied was for the janitor.
Correct. Yes. Second time, janitor, and then garbage man.
Yeah.
Lisa nixed me both times. I had to warm up to Lisa.
Sometimes I kind of believe Lisa's the CEO over there.
She runs all things. I always tell her she has more job security than any other person there. So.
I believe that. But all kidding aside, Clay, you've been doing a great job for National Swine, and we're tickled to have you doing what you do for us.
No, I appreciate it. And no, it's came in 2017 and was the VP of Membership Development and Youth, I think was what the position was called then.
Mm-hmm.
Served in that role for a year and a half, and then transitioned into the CEO. And I always talk about, one of the first things I got to do was when ASF kind of reared its ugly head, and that's when Expo split, and got to navigate that decision. And then we had COVID, and it was an interesting time at the registry from about 2019 to 2021, 22.
Yeah.
And then that's ultimately when so my wife works in the agronomy space, and so she had the opportunity to take a position, and so we made the really tough decision to leave, and so moved to Missouri, and I actually went to work for the American Angus Association for a little while in Walton webcasting, and it was about I think November of 23, if I'm getting my math right. Had some changes at NSR again, and so I had a few board members call and ask if I'd consider coming back, and I said no, and they called again and said no. So maybe my life's a story of threes. No, I was talking about it, and finally agreed to have lunch in Des Moines, and been happy to be back. It's always interesting. As you all know, this business is ever changing. It's dynamic. It's always full of challenges, but what I have found is when you leave and come back, the people are what really make this business fun, and they make it fulfilling. And it's, that's been a really great part about coming back for sure.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think 99% of the people were tickled to death to have you back. I mean, there's a lot of push, a lot of phone calls to guys that was on the board. Hey, why can't we do this? Yeah, no, thanks for coming.
Well, I appreciate that. And to the 1%, I keep trying for you.
So besides you at National Swine, I know you guys got a heck of a staff, and as any good business does, you do have to have a heck of a staff to go around. I know we kind of talked about Lisa and I know Doug and stuff like that is on board. So tell me about some of the other, we can't spend all day. You can't talk about every single person there, but I know there is definitely some big names at National Swine that's been there for extremely long time, i.e. Lisa. We could probably have a whole episode with Lisa on here too.
Get Lisa. She probably won't participate in the beverage we're having,
but we'll give her a non-alcoholic version.
It's good you bring that up, because that's been one of the things I've always felt very passionate about, is you've got to have a good team and a good group of people for you to be successful in anything. And that's one of the things that none of us are perfect, but I think I actually use a lot of sports analogies when it comes to our organization and just life in general. And the most successful teams have the best culture. They have the best collaboration, communication, all those things. And so but you also have to realize, I've been waiting to get this dig in since I heard I was coming from the podcast.
Okay.
It took an Oklahoma State University guy to come in and be the D coordinator for the Buckeyes to finally get a national. Jim Knowles not for any because he can't even tie his shoes, but it's all good.
But you realize he is gone.
Yeah.
Got rid of them too. But it's so important to have a good team, and we do have a great team, and those people have changed over the years. And that's one of the things that I think, and I tell this to all young people I get the opportunity to hire is, it's really hard sometimes to have that conversation with your boss that, hey, I'm going to leave and do something else. But I always say our goal is that you come here and have so much success that we turn you into an employee that someone else wants to hire, or you come here and you're so fulfilled you don't want to leave.
Right.
And those are the two kind of aspects we hope. And if it's the first, we can't be anything but grateful for the time we have for really talented people. And I've always had the philosophy that if we can have the best person, even if it's just for a year, I want them on the team while we have them. So you mentioned Doug, obviously, he's been there for now 11 years. Lisa is obviously, as I always say at the opening of our sale, our most tenured employee, 35 years. Got a great staff kind of on the operations side with Jeff Nemechek there from Kansas, Karen Vickery from Indiana running the NJSA right now. Clay Parrish, brought him back to kind of be our outreach and communications coordinator and work really delivering and bringing
Clay's done a great job. He's been out to the farm a couple times. I like Clay a lot.
Then we got our fieldman, Ryan. You had Ryan on the podcast. Ryan's one of
you got a heck of a staff right now.
Talented young people. Still have Nick, and Nick's a dear friend, I know, to both of us, and enjoy his knowledge and industry. And then we've got a great group of staff in the office a lot of people don't get to see. And one of the greatest compliments, I think, is when people call in or we're at shows and they may sit there and, we'll say, give me constructive feedback about something, but the conversation ends with, hey, every time I call into the office, the ladies are nice. We appreciate their help. And so we've got Jen Miller, Megan Vandenberg that works there in the office. Obviously, Lisa. We've got a new financial controller, Mandy Mitchell. She's great to work with. And then we've got a tech guy named Matt Fouts, who's actually been with us since about the time I started. And believe it or not, when things go awry and entry forms go down or the pedigree search is down, he's the first one to get on and fix those things. And so it's great to have a great team around us there at NSR.
Oh, for sure. Any good business is just as good as your employees that work for you. And that's one thing I've always preached about for here too. No different than, we're just as good. Mitch Dugan's been with us for 20 plus years. Yeah, a long time. And some of the others, Aaron, he's been on a few times on the podcast too. Almost 20 years. All of us have a core group, it takes to make things go around for.
And as they do more, I do less.
Yeah. But
so what are you going to do in 35 years when Lisa retires?
Exactly, 35 more years.
35 more years. Yeah.
I've always told Lisa, I said, the day you walk out the door is the day that I also will turn in my resignation. It's I think we have those discussions sometimes, and not to tell tales out of school, but I think we have a great transition plan. But the great thing I think people will want to know, and I don't think Lisa will get too upset if she listens to this, is Lisa has no interest at this time in retiring. She loves her job. She loves working with the people. Good. And I tell her, as I text her not too long ago, I said, as one of my best friends and trusted confidants, when that day comes, make sure you share that with me. But
give me at least a 3-year notice.
Yes, exactly. So, but no, it's great to have someone like that. And Robin still comes into the office. And that's one of the neat things about even the staff that have left is, we have a lot of people that still stay really connected. Baker pops into the office every once in a while to come see us and things like that. So it's fun to still have that community.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, with Lisa and with Robin, I kind of grew up with them a little bit. Not that I'm not older than they are, just, they were always my go-to girls, hey, I need this fixed. I need this fixed. And that for 35 years.
So I always joke with Lisa, you need to ask her about this sometime. She's going to be really embarrassed, I tell you this. But I remember someone asked her about me about a month into the job, and she said, "I don't know if he's going to make it." and when I heard that, I asked her about that, and she turned beet red. And I said, "So it's fun to see how that's changed."
So in 35 more years, ask her again.
Yeah.
Right. So one thing you're kind of touching on, the people in the office, when they answer the phone, they can call in and do a lot of stuff. I know that, we did have a big technological push. People can get online and they can do a lot of stuff online as far as litters and herd marks, and there's a lot of stuff like that. But do a lot of people still call in? I know, like, we're still big fans of talking to people.
Yep.
Like, that's my favorite part of communication. I like talking to people on the phone. So a lot of stuff we do, even though we can do it online, it's nice sometimes to have that personal connection with, just someone on the phone that, okay, I gave them my information. I registered for a herd mark. I'm trying to get a litter done. I'm trying to make a nomination or a change. Is that still an option you guys prefer?
Yeah, we still have a lot of folks that call in, and we call it manual pedigree work if we're keying those things in. But honestly, a lot of it now has become, hey, I see the form online, or I understand what I need to do. I'm just calling in to confirm or ask the question to then ultimately, maybe you then go and do it after you hang up the phone, or we do it. And so that's the thing that, we talk about internally a lot as staff is, there is a push to have more technology and have more ability for members to do things. And that's ironically one of the things we're working on is a new digital pedigree interface. But what we don't want to lose in all that is the customer service and the human component. Right.
That human interaction, I think, is super important, and building that customer base.
And as simple as we've had the discussion, we got a new phone system, and it's like, well, when the phone rings, should it just automatically go to a recording and then distribute, or should we have someone answer the phone? And we've been very prominent. We need to have someone answer the phone.
Yeah, I agree with that.
And if it doesn't, it's because everybody else is on the phone.
Right.
As a catch.
But, we actually, we just hired 2 part-time receptionists to help us with making sure that when someone walks in, they see a person, or when they call in, they say, this is the National Swine Registry. And I still think that in today's world where it's so fast-paced and there's not as much human engagement, hearing that voice is important, and especially in our business and industry. And I think about when I call back here, and what's the first thing I hear? Shipley's.
Yep.
And that's
we try to answer every call we can.
The clientele you deal with would be people that want to talk to people.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I feel like that's one thing for us anyway that we do very, very well. I've always prided ourselves in our personal, relationships that we build with each of our customers, and all that comes from picking up the phone and saying, "Hello, Shipley's."
Yeah.
And same with you guys. I think that's important to keep that human interaction.
So your job, Clay, you're in charge of all the shows, or making sure they get run off. How many national shows are there a year?
Yeah, and that's a great question, because sometimes it's floating and varying, right?
Okay,
so, I always like if we'll try and run through the calendar, and then everybody can get on the YouTube comments and say, well, you forgot this one.
Right.
We start off the year in Perry, Georgia. There with the Winter National and Winter Type Conference. A lot of people don't realize that's our second biggest show behind the expo.
Is it really?
No kidding.
So you think about, I always hear the story about there's this concept of let's have a pig show in Georgia in January, and everybody says, well, that'll never work. And we sit here.
And that hasn't been that many years ago.
We sit here in 2025, 26, and it's the second biggest NJSA show behind the expo we put on. So, so we have that. And then in February, we brought back the extravaganza. So that happens there in the Indiana State Fairgrounds. We have the Southwest Type Conference in Belton. Not an actual live event, but then we have the draft there in May.
Which I've really been liking that a lot.
The draft has been a really fun event to see. And I actually remember 5 minutes before the draft, 2020, you called and asked how to bid.
Yeah, I didn't know.
And I said, this is going to go horrible.
But you got to understand, me and computers like each other.
Not because I was worried about that. I said, if we've got Randy calling 5 minutes before the sale asking how to bid, we're going to be in real trouble. But it went well, and it's obviously continued to grow. Then we have the exposition going back to Des Moines next year, and actually we'll be there the next 3 years.
Back in Des Moines. Okay.
Yep. Then the Summer Type Conference, which is moving to Indianapolis. It'll be there for the next 3 years. We just actually 2 days ago finished up with our Southwest Regional for NJSA. This is the first year, and the reason I say it flexes a little bit, we actually collaborated with the Oklahoma State Fair to host that show, and that went really well and a great collaboration. So you get 2 shows one weekend, which I think, as a lot of families know, with expenses and travel, as much opportunities they can have to do that. One of the favorite NJSA shows is coming up here in 2 weeks, which is New York. They're at Hamburg for the Eastern Regional. Then Fall Expo there at Duncan. And then we'll roll into the Western Regional in December and our annual meeting as well. And then we think about our affiliate shows too. So we've got National Western, Arizona National, American Royal, and North American, plus all this other state fairs we attend. So it's a lot.
So you're well over 20.
Close,
Well,
yes.
Yes, well over 20.
Between junior and open events.
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
yeah,
for
yeah,
sure.
Yeah.
It's always interesting this time of year. People say, "Well, you're probably slowing down from the summer shows," and it's actually the opposite. It's
You're picking up for those fall shows.
we do more small events in the fall, and it's more of a marathon than
you
we
still
hit
got
three
to go
big
there.
ones.
You still got to go there.
Yeah, we hit 3 big ones in the summer. Regroup after state
Yeah.
fairs.
Now, how many state fairs do you go to?
Me personally, I'll try to hit at least 4 or so. Our staff collectively footprint, we'll try to cover 8 to 10 just to have representation at and make sure we assist with those open shows and sales and be there for the junior event. So,
Do you have a favorite show without throwing anything under the bus? What's your number one favorite show that you said, man, I'm really looking forward to go to what?
to attend or to put on? That's a.
Tell me both.
I will say to attend every year is Belton, the Southwest Type Conference. One, the food is second.
Donnie's every day.
Second, I always feel like for us here in the Midwest, it's usually awful weather the 2 weeks preceding to it. So it's the first time we get down there, and the sun is generally, that can be cold. And
I've
icy
been
all
to a
the
couple
same
cold
time.
Beltons.
But generally the sun's shining. There's guys planting corn, which is always a little bit alarming when it's February and you see our Texas friends planting corn. But that's always been one of my favorite events, is Belton for sure.
And then so to put on then.
You know, honestly, I really enjoyed watching the draft and then the Boards of Fall, our new virtual sale we do at Duncan, because it's really cool to see young breeders that might not, for lack of a better word, be a name, get recognized on that platform and be rewarded. And it's been really fun to be part of that journey and see that and see just see that process come to fruition.
You know, the draft sales become one of my favorite because, you know, you get that video a week or so before, then you kind of go through and you study and then you just jump in your truck and go. You know, it gives you a chance to go look at these hogs in their home settings. While you're there, you can see the mothers. While you're there, you can visit, you can do whatever. And I don't know why I think it's better, but I just like it better.
It goes back to that first point of having, you know, one of the questions I get asked pretty regularly, just to kind of pick at a scab a little bit, is, well, you know, these virtual events are going well. Will you just get rid of live shows? And the short answer is no. I mean, there's still a place for it. There's value in having live shows. But the thing that, to your point, Randy, about the draft is it reminds me of, and what I tell our field guys is it's truly what field herd visits, engaging and going to breeders' house and staying on the farm was and should be. You get to see the mom, the grandma. You get to see all the boars that this breeder has on feed that potentially are going to go to shows that summer. And you see the whole perspective. And it's kind of like Belton too, in the sense of a lot of us have been cooped up all winter. The weather hasn't been great. And so for these 2 weeks in April, May, we're going to go see as many boars as we can.
Exactly.
It kind of creates some excitement.
Well, you know, as a youngster growing up in this business many years ago, that's what we did. You know, Sandy and I, we'd jump in the truck in June or whatever, and maybe be gone for 10 days and try to cover just as much of the country as we could, you know, looking at boars, not seeing videos ahead of time, just visiting with the guys and, hey, what do you have and whatever. And it's fun to jump in the truck and just go see things and go see. But you just get to see so much.
And honestly, too, the feedback we get from folks like you two has helped make that event better. From, I remember the, second and third draft we put on, we didn't put out a whole lot of information beforehand, and everybody had to sit and wait for the preview. And then it was, boy, we got to get out and look at everything in 7 days. And so what we figured out, again, and appreciative for feedback from folks like you of, hey, it'd be really nice to at least know who's consigned, what they've got. If we're searching for a new Duroc board, who's consigned Duroc boards, those type of things. And so that's been the other fun thing about those events, is they just continue to evolve based on y'all's feedback and how we can make it better.
Sure.
Well, I think it's just such an open palette, because it's a new event. It's online, it's virtual. You're not constrained to be at a certain arena at a certain time. With, we can make it whatever we want it to be. And I really enjoy it a lot, not only because of that, but the timing that you guys decided to put that on. We're able to look at these boars and buy them, a lot sooner than, sometimes I feel like we're under the gun a little bit. If, Expo's not too bad, Louisville, you get a little bit of time before we start getting them home and getting them healthy again and taking their pictures and getting them online. And then, some of these state fairs, Indiana State Fair, to buy a boar and bring it home and turn it around and start using it. Some of these, you're under kind of a time crunch. So with the timing that you guys decided to put that draft on, I think for the boar studs like ourselves makes it a lot easier. So I feel we get an extra couple months to go get these boars, to bring them home, to get them situated and get them going again and get them ready to use.
Yeah. And again, I think it's so interesting, this concept was something I'd pitched prior to COVID, and, organizationally we were kind of lukewarm on the concept, but then when something happens like COVID and it forces you to think about things differently, sometimes those are the best, honestly, things that re-energize us to think about how we change and adapt.
Yeah. It ends up being really special.
Yeah. A lot of it's now our highest grossing event for our members. So it is now surpassed a lot of our premier events. But I think, as we all know too, one of the challenges is so much of our events are determined by one or two animals that can make the difference in success of an event. So those are things we also have to keep in mind too.
Yep.
So moving on from that, really like the way some of these shows are happening. If you don't mind, we want to touch on maybe a topic that has had a little bit of controversy around it from time to time. I know we kind of pre-spoke about this a little bit, and it's something that, we hear about an awful lot. You get to a lot of these shows, these purebred shows especially, and I know, we did talk about there is a little bit of solution we've been working on to this. The age that people claim their animals are sometimes isn't always the most truthful. Everyone's aware of it, but it seems like there's times where people are kind of maybe pushing the boundaries a little bit on the age that they report. Could you give me a little bit of insight or opinion on that?
Yeah, and I'll speak a little bit generally, and then I think part of this discussion too is a little educational too, because we currently at our junior shows exhibit them a little differently, and I won't get into maybe today my personal opinion. We can do that offline of how that works, but just how we do it to kind of address that. But the first thing I just want to say generally to the topic is it is an issue. And, we have this discussion in breed board meetings. We have the discussion at the executive committee level. And the main thing that I think whenever you're trying to tackle an issue or talk about it is let's address that it is an issue. And I feel like it has been on the forefront of the association. And the other thing I'd share with listeners, and particularly folks in the swine industry, is it's not just a swine industry issue.
Right.
In April, I sat on a panel with 3 CEOs of cattle breed associations as well as myself, and we talked about it and talked about the potential resolutions and issues. And the fundamental challenge to it is, unless you have hard concrete evidence, it's hard to justify and say what is and what isn't. We have ranges, we have weights, we have, we can read maturity, but to pinpoint a specific data point is challenging. And the point we all agreed with within that group was, until there is a test that we can pull Randy Shipley's hair and tell that he is exactly this age, there's always going to be that gray area or challenge to the issue. So what we talk about is what can we do to address or discuss the issue. And so it's been interesting too, as someone, as we started, that's been with the organization, left, and then come back, to kind of hear all sides of the issue. You have folks that fundamentally believe we should always show by age, and we should use visual indicators to indicate whether pigs are overaged. And I think that's a fair point. The reality is some of our evaluators today probably don't know or understand what one needs to look like for that particular age. And that's a point we can put. We need to educate our evaluators and do some of that. There's a camp that believes we should just show everything by weight. And there's some reason to consider that. It makes your contemporary groups, more level. The concern there is, well, where does the line draw in terms of making hogs slower growing and maturity and those things? And that's just the point. So today, right, wrong, or indifferent, how we show junior hogs at our events is we show them by weight within a month. So we go through, we take all the farrowing dates that have been turned in within the pedigree, we break them out by month, and then we split the classes by weight. So from a judge's perspective, it gives them, and the feedback we've gotten is, at least the Decembers, Januaries, those folks or those individual animals are relatively the same size within their contemporary groups. The challenge it possesses is, okay, does it actually incentivize people to put the right date, or does it actually allow more flex with the weights? And so NJSA shows have been showing that way, I believe, since 2023. So this is really only the second year, full year we'd be. So I don't know if we have a real strong data set to say whether it's made the issue better, made it worse. And again, it's kind of like as I started the discussion, and again, this is a discussion. You have the feedback of we need to show everything by age, and we have everybody that shows by weight.
We try to keep.
We have all those discussion points of, how you address the issue. And I think, again, the fundamental issue is there. It's not just a swine industry issue. I think that's important. And the other thing that I think is important, and I say this every time we bring up the topic, is we can't regulate morality.
No.
But we have to figure out ways to create a system that's fair. And as we exist today, is that the case? Some will argue no, some will argue yes. But I think the dialogue is what's important as we look at moving forward.
What I noticed this year, Clay, and I've just at a few of those shows, was the big hogs don't always win. They're for a while. And maybe with some guys, they have an advantage, but some guys are lining up hog shows. But you bring a really good hog, then you're going to place really high. And if you don't place super high, you can still be top selling. That's important for these people to understand as well. How much of an advantage is this giving me? Well, maybe not as much as they think.
And the other again point to make on that too, which again, depending on where you listen and you clip out and you do all this on this podcast, so I want to make sure I reemphasize the point. We're not trying to get rid of live shows.
No.
Right.
But that's been one of the comments about virtual events like the draft. I don't have to worry about getting beat in class by someone that I've put the right age on my board or my guilt, and I get beat by one that's overaged what I perceive to be overaged, because I'm have the opportunity to promote and merchandise my animal as the animal for my firm. And it allows the buying public to determine.
Right. And as a buyer, when you go out and look at these hogs, you're not going to buy the great big one that's not good enough. You're going to buy someplace in the middle, or maybe even clear on the bottom side if he's exactly what fits your program. And it's maybe not as big a problem as we all perceive. If people go by what they absolutely or what they want to have at the house,
And I agree. The one point that I still, a lot of times when I do these type of communication things, Rick, is what's one of the things that keeps you up at night? And to me, this topic is one of those, because my question is, what are we teaching the next generation?
Right.
Right. And I think that's why it's important, to your point, Randy. regardless of what our perception is of whether it is an issue, it is an issue. I think we've addressed that it is an issue, but I think it's important that we talk through all angles of it and understand this didn't happen last year. This issue didn't start last year.
Oh no, this is something that's been building.
And so as we identify solutions and we think about potential solutions, we have to evaluate the environment we're in and think about it and figure out what direction we go to try and mitigate those issues.
Yeah. Well, no, I mean, it's a topic you could talk about forever, but you guys are doing a good job trying to handle it. And I did have a question for you, and it's a question I get asked a lot. We sell purebred semen to a lot of new people. They call and they say, we have to get something from you. Well, yeah, you have to get an AI cert from the boar stud you get your semen from, or wherever you get your semen at. And then they said, well, okay, well, go ahead and register my litter. Well, we can't do that. You need to call NSR. And so I try to explain to them that they have to have a herd mark to get an AI cert. Can you tell the guys or tell the people listening, what is a herd mark and what does it do to help you?
The herd mark, essentially, I describe it as it's your identifying method for you and your herd.
And it's your herd only.
Correct.
Yeah.
Unless, some of our junior accounts, there might be, and that was, I think, one of your questions, like for our bred, and this is probably getting too complicated, but for bred knowns, you can have a single herd mark with multiple kids' names under it, those type of things. But in a lot of ways, it's like your social security number, and it's your identifier.
But is there an identifier for the rest of their life? Is that true?
If unless they request a new herd mark. But yes, it's designated for
them.
Yeah, and we think about, I liken it, and again, I did grow up originally in the cattle industry. It's your brand, right? And so when people talk about, you throw out whatever herd mark you want, it identifies them as that person or as that herd mark. And so that's always going to be the identifier to follow those herds or those individual animals and those litters. And so, and again, I think that brings up a really good point of where I have probably about 5 minutes in the conversation started of those are questions that we're happy to answer. So don't hesitate to call and ask. But to your point, if you're new to the purebred business, that's something different. You don't need an AI cert on a crossbred litter. You don't maybe need to do some of those things, but those are things that help identify and keep lineage. And
if I want to raise Yorkshire hogs and I want to be able to keep track of everything, that's something I'm going to need to do.
I had a conversation last week, and as I alluded to, we're working on a new digital pedigree system interface. And one of the things we were looking at is the amount of just animal data that we have in our legacy system.
Oh yeah.
And when we talk about moving data over, and for a single breed, there's over 2 million individual animal records.
Wow.
And then of that, consider 60-ish% that are non-parent animals. You think about barrows or animals that never generated that were registered.
Right.
And then you combine that to, at least on a digital system, and literally if we drove to West Lafayette and opened up a storage garage, we would find the original herd books. This is just what's in the digital interface, 30 plus years. That's
before that.
Yeah, that's a lot of data.
It is.
And so when you think about what the impact is of a herd mark, that's your thumbprint in history. Or it can be as you think about the future of your business.
No, it really is. I like when we go to the shows and when you're looking up stuff and, you got this couple herd marks in mind, like going through and like if I see like WGW, I know I'm looking at a pretty good Yorkshire, but potentially, we know the few that we've used a lot and we see in different people's pedigrees. So to me, seeing it as an identifier for maybe another firm that, we've done business with prior. And if I'm even looking at a hog that maybe they didn't raise, but they raised, an offspring of that hog and where they've used it and it's something I can identify as like, okay, George Watson from Kentucky is a firm that we've used an awful lot here. And I know if I'm looking through and I see that WGW, down the sale order, that's maybe a hog I want to pay attention to.
Or the inverse of that I think is really fun too, is when you or Randy walk up and point at the sale order and say, what is this? Who's this? Like whose herd mark is that? And either the answer is, well, this is the first time here, or it might even be, I don't know, I need to look it up. And that's equally fun too, because
Yeah.
that's our next generation, or maybe the next outlier that we find.
Right, which we've done that before too. A Yorkshire bull we bought at Louisville probably over a decade ago. We called Buzzsaw, Grant Geesey, and it is probably the first ever success at that time he had was, raising that boar, and it did really good, and we ended up buying it, and he did really good for us. And and I'm not saying like we put Grant on the map by any means at all, but a guy like him that was a lot of publicity for at the time.
But he's continued to have a lot of success.
Of course, and believe me, I'm not trying to take credit for that whatsoever. But at the time, then that put that herd mark, in front of a lot of other people's eyes too.
So another question that we get asked a lot, they've raised this litter of pigs for the kids. Do we put it under the kids' names? And can I take this hog to New York under my farm name if my son's showing it? How do you guys handle that at NSR?
Yeah. The first piece of advice I would give is make sure you check and know your show's rules.
Okay.
So, and what I mean by that is, so generally at an NSR event, it can be under the farm name as long as the kid's name is also on the pedigree. So it can be multiple kids. So let's make up a fake name. Smith Farms LLC, Alex, Joe, and Beth Smith can all be on the same pedigree and exhibit at an NSR event for junior side of things.
Yep.
If it was bred and owned, obviously that would need to match the breeder as well. But it's important, and that's why I say it's important to know the rules for your shows, because there are shows, state fairs, county fairs, that want it just in one individual's name. And so that's why, and I know that can be cumbersome and challenging, but that's why it's important to know up front and to do those things to make sure you know what your individual shows are.
Especially if the kids are showing maybe litter mate gilts.
Correct. And if they're, and if you have those questions and those changes need to be made, this is, if I'm going to give a piece of advice collectively, and we're all guilty of it, is don't wait to the last minute to figure those things out. And that's, we all are guilty of that.
We see it happen all the time.
And honestly, our biggest recording days leading up to a show are, guess what?
The day before the show.
Or check-in.
Yep.
The day of the show. And so just, I would, make sure you know those rules. And if there's those things that you can mitigate, try and do that.
Get it done ahead of time. There's a lot of times we get a call for someone requesting an AI cert. Well, I need this done right now. I'm on the way to the show. And like, it might be Friday at night and we're out to eat. You guys are close. I mean, there's not a lot we can do. So like, guys, like what Clay's saying is 100% correct. Do the stuff at least a couple of weeks ahead of time, get it done, be prepared. Yeah. Be ready to go by the time you're checking your animals in.
I like to, since we've been picking on Lisa, I like to remind Lisa of this, that when I was first showing in NJSA, I would be mortified if I hadn't had my pedigree in the mail 10 days before I left for a show. And it was because there was this lady that worked at the National Swine Registry that was always at the check-in line that I was scared to death of. And I did not want to disappoint or upset her. So I always keep that in mind, that if there's something from that perspective, I always reflect back on, man, it's really nice that we can do some of this turnaround, but 12-year-old Clay would have really appreciated maybe some of that, because he was scared to death of that Lisa Kennedy.
She was always really mean. So a question that what you were talking about kind of brings up. So I've got a pedigree that says Shipley Swine's genetics on it, and one of my granddaughters is going to take it to a hog show. Can I transfer it to one of my granddaughters on Monday, her show it on Friday, and then transfer it back in my name on Monday?
I mean, theoretically, I wouldn't recommend that, because that's a good way to get on the naughty list from taking, because you're probably calling in at 3:59 on Friday.
Okay.
I'm just,
I've been on the naughty.
Yeah. I mean, and again, you have to follow the rules of when the transfer.
Oh yeah.
But one of the another common example question of that is, I'm a breeder that sold because of the time of year, I'll use this example. I'm a breeder that sold a gilt to a youth exhibitor in Texas. And the intention is that I'm going to show her at Belton as a breeder and seller, or it might be a lease thing, depending on what it is. but when I show her at Belton, I want to make sure she's in my name as the breeder. Will you transfer her back to me to exhibit at that show? And that's something we can do. So,
Okay.
I mean, but the key to that is what's the ownership date? What's the transfer deadline?
Right.
Those type.
So be on your toes, get it done ahead of time.
And the bigger, and the big question too, and I think we're seeing a lot more interest in this because of our format change to the bred and owned. We have a separate show now, and you got to see that this summer where those kids really get highlighted. The thing I encourage folks is think about participating in the bred and owned. And so, for a lot of people, it's important to have that family herd mark on those sows, but take a gilt or two and designate them for your kids to be able to participate in the bred and owns and have that opportunity, because it is a separate show. It's a separate environment. You collect points to be eligible for premier breeder and some of those things. I think it's to me, coming back, that's when one of the most fulfilling things is from the bred and owned show to be frankly kind of an afterthought to this year at the expo, seeing people gathered around watching kids that bred their own hogs.
Sure.
Show on the biggest stage was very cool.
It is cool.
Yep. And when they have success, they seem to like it better.
Yes.
Yep.
And been fun to see, because we allow at our events for them to show in the own show as well. So fun to see one that does well in the bred and owned show turn around and then go show in the own show and compete too.
Yeah, no, that's neat. It's exciting for me to see these kids, trying to touch on some of the positives, go out, maybe a kid that hasn't done good previously has, done it for a couple of years now, maybe kind of started at the bottom. We worked out in the middle, we're getting placed a little bit, and then they show up and they win one. And to see their face and their excitement and mom and dad and everyone's there, it's just, that's kind of like puts this is why we do it. You know what I mean? Like, this is the reason that we show up and you guys bring 30 staff with you and all the equipment and stuff. It's when it comes down to it, it's for the kids.
And I'll bring it full circle. The thing that makes it even neater is when that bred and owned kid that we've watched start when they're very little enters a board in an open show,
Right.
or submits one for the draft or a virtual event that's come through the bred and owned program. That's super cool to see too. And then if they ultimately, which we've gotten to see, land them in a boar stud or a really good breeder's home, that's awesome to see.
Yep.
It is.
Yep. And a 9-year-old kid can put the next boar in whatever boar stud you want to name. I mean, it's very, very possible and probable.
I'll put this offer out for anyone that wants to volunteer. One of the best experiences we have during the year is when we have our premier breeder interviews and sit across the table and listen to these kids talk about raising hogs and breeding hogs and learning it. I mean, to hear some of these 12-year-old kids and younger talk about it,
You'd think they were 25 or 30.
you'd be so impressed.
Yeah. Oh, I bet that's right.
One thing I want to touch on real quick is this ball of basil paintings that Clay brought for us as a present. We always kind of have a little bit of whiskey in a bottle. We've talked about it a time or two before. It's kind of what makes this episode a little bit fun. We kind of enjoy maybe having a glass of whiskey, as we're sitting here and talking. Maybe. You might have seen us drinking some whiskey in a previous episode.
Yeah.
But Clay, I do want to thank you. This is a nice bottle we've been enjoying. Believe it or not, when Clay brought this, it was full and we opened up the top of it. Got started, and I'm not sure
Someone else was drinking.
Yeah. Sandy.
Probably was her, but it's just something that does make the episodes go by fun. So I do want to say thank you for that. Clay, anything else that you want to touch on that we haven't been through? I know we went through a lot of topics. We covered a lot of bases.
Covered a lot of ground, didn't you?
Covered a lot of ground today.
I did want to just share a story, and I was thinking about this from the initial contact. And again, appreciate the invite. And I share this because I think it's so important for young people and potentially young judges to hear. And people are going to look at me when I tell the story like, well, you're just kissing this guy's rear end. But it's so important at these shows, whether you're a breeder, the judge, to take time to talk to these young people.
Yeah.
And particularly these people that are judging shows, to take time and look kids in the eye and say, hi, how are you? Talk to them about their animals and look at those things. And the reason I wanted to say that and bring that up is because I can distinctly remember this guy sitting to my left doing that for me when he judged the Illinois State Fair. And I was looking.
That was last year, wasn't it?
Yeah. I was showing a crossbred gilt in that we still have that awful barn, but that junior barn, and it's dark and dreary and hot.
Mm-hmm.
And this jolly guy, as I always described him, from Ohio, saw me drive my pig out, didn't have any idea who I was, didn't matter. Looked at her and said, "Young man, how are you today?" And I said, "I'm doing well." He goes, "That's a really nice gilt. We should probably pen her." And she didn't win. She was second in class, which for me was, at that point in my life, huge. But I still remember that. And so I wanted to share that story, one, because for me, this is full circle getting to come and do this today. But for all those listening at home, particularly young people that have ambition to judge shows and be involved in this industry, we started the conversation with people and about the culture and the team. That's how we continue to have success and grow this business, is treating people that way. And ironically, you didn't know this, that gilt was a sitting bull, so that's why you might. I share that because I think it's important for people to know it does make a difference when you do those things.
Small comments can carry a lot of weight.
And for me, I can tell you unequivocally, if it wasn't people like you and folks that invested in me and took the time, I wouldn't be sitting in the seat I am today.
And that's true with all of us.
Correct.
Yeah, that's true with all of us.
And I think that's an important lesson. That's just a story.
Yeah, that's cool.
And I've watched him judge a lot of hog shows, and I've seen him do that to every kid that's ever walked in the ring, maybe. I think it's important. Just putting that personal connection, does go a long, long way. So that's really cool. Guys, anything else we want to touch on here? I feel like we've heck of an episode so far.
Yeah. Mitchell, you haven't said much.
I keep telling Mitchell I feel bad. I feel like I'm blasting this way.
Yeah, no, we're good.
Well, guys, with that being said, Clay, I want to say thank you once again for coming out here, making about a 3 or so 4-hour drive to come sit down with us and be here and everything. It's sure been cool. Guys, if you're liking these podcasts, tune in, give us a like, give us a share, write a comment, tell us what you'd like to see us do next. We're trying to expand here and hit a bunch of different topics and get some kind of cool special guests to come sit down with us. So, thank you again. It's been a pleasure sitting here discussing stuff with Clay, and we're going to keep trying to do this and do our best. So thank you all.
Yep. Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
See you guys.